This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 10 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. I really had only one question on my mind when the doorbell rang announcing the arrival of the $4,900 102 megapixel equipped fixed leaf shutter 35mm f4 equipped 4-stop internal ND filter equipped dedicated aspect ratio dial equipped 5.7 million dot EVF equipped robust rear articulating panel equipped blah 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 GFX100 RF that Fujifilm had overnighted to us, and that was: would the imagery from the RF be as good as, better, or worse than Leica's benchmark $6,300 61 megapixel equipped, also same field of view, fixed leaf shutter, image stabilized 28mm f1.7 equipped, equally robust rear articulating panel equipped Q3? Okay, fine, I had two questions. Could the extra 41 megapixels of this eerily similarly configured RF, crammed into a body within spitting distance for size, weight, and handling of the Q3 upon which it is clearly modeled, while still adding a bell and whistle or three, give us the equivalent of a combined Leica Q3 and Q3 43 with the same or better image quality at essentially half the size, half the weight, at just about 1/3 of their combined price? Well, yeah, three questions, really. Last one, I promise. How would the RF stack up against Hasselblad's X2D100C in terms of size, weight, handling, operational speed, autofocus performance, and image quality? You might be surprised by the answers. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and I will just cut to the chase. I think Fujifilm's just announced and keenly priced GFX100 RF, $100 less than its bigger and older brother GFX100 S2, a whopping 21% less expensive than the OG Q3 alone, even if fractionally larger and heavier than the Q3, or, depending upon how you think about it, marginally smaller and lighter than the Q3, depending actually upon how precisely one measures volume and whether or not one attaches a lens hood, or in the case of the RF, attaches the included but optional metal hood and weather sealing adapter for it, is the most interesting, thoroughly considered camera Fujifilm has released in the last 4.5 years. With image quality like this. Bottom line, if you want the closest experience to shooting and having the image quality of a Leica Q3, which isn't a Q3 itself, we're talking buying new here, Fujifilm's GFX100 RF is it. If you want the lowest price, lightest weight, entry point into the entire Fujifilm GFX100 lineup, the GFX100 RF is it. If you want the most compelling digital medium format camera for everyday carry, classic street, or travel, the GFX100 RF is it. In fact, if you want the lowest priced, smallest and lightest weight entry point into natively higher resolution than 61 megapixels, irrespective of format or brand, I'm talking no pixel shifting, the GFX100 RF is it. But it really could use a grip. Hold that thought. My Q3s aren't going anywhere, and I haven't specifically answered any of the questions I just posed, have I? Yet. Let's get into it. 1. The most striking differences in image quality between the GFX100 RF and the original Leica Q3, all else being equal, come down, for me, to color, field of view, shallowest depth of field, and lens quality. A. Like Hasselblad's X2D100C, the 16-bit color depth of the GFX100 RF makes a difference to my eye viewed even on a tiltable rear panel. I find it more pleasing straight out of camera than the Q3, even though I already love the colors of the Q3, so let's not get piggy. Between the Fuji and the Hassi, however, I'd give the nod for color to the Hassi, courtesy of Hasselblad's natural color solution. The nod to Hassi again for ultimate image quality, courtesy of its interchangeable lens mount, though I'd give the nod to the RF for vignetting. But again, let's not get piggy. Although the Hassi has 8 stops of in-body image stabilization. B. In theory, the RF's integrated 35f4 offers the same field of view as the Q3's integrated Summilux 28-1.7, but because the RF's sensor has a different aspect ratio, it captures notably more vertically than the Q3 does. Again, like the Hassi, I think this is a real advantage of both medium format cameras. C. On the other hand, the difference in shallowest depth of field is quite noticeable as well. The RF's f4 maximum aperture offers the full-frame equivalent shallowest depth of field of an f3.2, an even clearer advantage this time accruing to the Q3's Summilux 28. Hasselblad's XCD38V f2.5 is about 1 stop closer to the light gathering ability and shallowest depth of field of the Summilux. It's a full-frame equivalent of an f2, and both of these characteristics show clearly as well. If memory serves, I'd rate the 38V as better than the GF35 f4, but only a true apples-to-apples comparison on the streets of New York at the same time would allow me to validate that memory. Looking at images in different times and different places wasn't enough. I wasn't able to get a 38V in time to do that. D. The net of it is this. In the short time I had it, I am not certain I draw the same conclusion over sufficient time with it. I found the GFX100 RF's combined performance of its 35 f4 and 102 megapixel sensor to be essentially a wash compared to the combined performance of the Q3 Summicron and 61 megapixel full-frame sensor. There was no clear winner here. My ability to call it exacerbated by finding more chromatic aberration in some images taken with the 35, others taken with the 28, which, on the one hand, is a win for the significantly less expensive RF and for Fujifilm. This is about what I'd expected, but not as good as I'd hoped. Like Hasselblad, actually, it seems to me that Fujifilm has opted to use sensor resolution to equal image quality against the best full-frame alternatives out there, rather than build a lens to extract every last bit of image quality possible from the extra 41 megapixels. This is a business decision, which I understand, one of a number of trade-offs which had to be made to feasibly deliver a camera of this size, weight, and price. Somewhat ameliorated by the probability that only a relatively small number of buyers are likely to push it anywhere close to the limit. I did not have time to compare the RF directly to my Q343, but based on decades of experience, remembering how I felt when looking at the output from those two cameras at different times, and comparing different images taken at different times by both cameras once again, I will offer a working hypothesis, which is this. If ultimate image quality is what you want, the RF is not going to pull double duty as a combined Q3 and Q343. At an equivalent 43mm field of view, the RF is no longer a 102 megapixel camera, but instead a 66 megapixel camera. This is quite close to the Q343's 61 megapixels, but that Apo Summicron 43f2 is a pinnacle optic the GF35 is not. In other words, if you want the best image quality and, I might add, the better experience of photography, the shortest distance between intent and execution. If you are at all like me and can afford it, the Q3 series remains the more compelling option. If you want the best medium format camera for everyday carry, street or travel, the RF reigns supreme against the Hasselblad by virtue of its size, weight, novel and user-friendly ergos, and relatively bargain price. But if you want the better camera for studio work, including portrait, fashion, food, and product shots, the better camera for handheld landscape work, handheld environmental portrait work, in short, those genres or use cases where greater versatility, precision, even better color, a dramatically better user interface, better build quality, better feel in hand, a feeling that you're dealing with something more special and more direct, and both the time to dial in that precision and the budget to go for it, the Hassie reigns supreme. Oh well, no such thing as a free lunch after all, but these are way beyond first world problems. 2. Even if I still prefer my Q3s, I was pleasantly surprised by many of the RF's details to which I just referenced. Bravo Fujifilm. A. The RF employs a new, vertically arranged rear dial, allowing one to easily preview the effect of different aspect ratios, a control for which the Q series has no counterpart. Those of us who like the idea of a medium format digital camera pulling double duty as, say, a Hasselblad X-Pan film camera will probably love it. I liked it more than I thought I would, although I found the dial to be quite stiff. I don't know if it will be this stiff on production cameras. A center button to lock the wheel would be welcome, unless it's already there and I just missed it. Could happen. B. The RF employs a digital zoom rocker switch below the front scroll wheel that one could argue is an easier and more accessible approach than repeatedly pressing a rear function button on the Q3. I would agree. C. Speaking of scroll wheels, the RF scroll wheels, front and back, are taller than any other camera I've had in hand, and I like them. They are easier for me to manipulate. With this said, however, I don't think they will make a material difference when wearing gloves, and only the rear scroll wheel can be pressed to change what functions it controls. My glasses keep falling off. I'm getting a new pair. D. The RF includes a 4-stop internal ND filter, first time in the GFX lineup and something the Q3 does not have either, although with a maximum shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second and maximum aperture f4. I wonder how often one is likely to need it. E. Like the Q3, the RF has a threaded shutter release, and I like this too. I immediately attached a soft release to it, and again, this makes a difference, even with gloves, even though I think Fujifilm already has some of the best feeling shutter releases in the business. F. The RF has 3.5mm mic and headphone jacks, a USB-C port, and a pair of SD UHS-2 card slots. The Q3 is equipped with a single card slot, a USB-C port, and a micro HDMI port, no 3.5mm jack for mic or headphone to be found. But I don't know that it makes much sense for either camera to be used as a serious video camera. And if you're not serious about video, your iPhone will do as well. The Hasselblad X2D100C doesn't do video at all. I like that. In addition to its single CF Express card slot that neither of these cameras has, the X2D also comes with a whopping 1 terabyte of internal SSD. I really like that. G. When tilted 90 degrees for what is essentially waist-level viewing, the RF's rear panel clears the EVF's eye cup by a comfortable margin, while the Q3's does not. It always surprises me when I see camera designers allowing the EVF to partially obscure the rear panel in this position, so kudos again to Fujifilm. H. On the other hand, the GFX100 RF, while it does feel very well built, does not feel quite as solid or of a cloth in hand as the Q3 or the X2D, which I consider, again, a reasonable trade-off for what the RF does well, especially at the price. I. The combined analog shutter speed and ISO dial, however, a manual of arms dating back to an era when ISO could only be changed between rolls of film and shutter speed was typically changed only between shots, remains suboptimal by today's digital standards. This does slow things down quite a bit, though once I have the RF back in hand, as I did with the X100 and XT series, I ought to be able to figure out how to remap functionality more to my liking. J. Camera menu systems and manuals of arms are challenging for any manufacturer, a juggling act between the priorities of its existing customer base, protecting the effort expended to learn the legacy menu system with the intended ease of use via muscle memory and learning what to ignore that comes from that effort, and the priorities for both a fundamentally reimagined menu system and manual of arms to make it easier for conquest sales. That is, making it easier to switch brands. Think about, if like me you are old enough to remember, the lengths to which Microsoft duplicated the functionality of Lotus 123, which in turn duplicated the functionality of VisiCalc, in both cases to make the switch as seamless as possible. Now, I've reached the point. You may be at a completely different place, and that's fine. Great, in fact, for you, I envy you, that I'll just say it. I now experience Fujifilm's menu system as the worst in the business, a result of the original software engineer versus practitioner logic of it, which is not unique, a grafted-on, inconsistent touch interface, and doing nothing of consequence over the years to make it better. Not an easy thing to fix, I grant you. This is not only compared to Hasselblad and Leica, which are the best in the business, but compared to the other mass-market cameras now as well. I'm talking Canon, Nikon, Sony, and Panasonic, and now Sigma with its BF camera. Not that the BF doesn't have its own issues, it does, but the BF is much more ambitious than most of us recognize, and just about everything has issues, never mind just new cameras. 3. For the most part, the RF feels and acts more like a full-frame camera than a medium-format camera, and this is a great thing, most especially when it comes to autofocus. It's good. As I just said, don't like the menu system for it. But once dialed in, the autofocus seems to be the best in the GFX lineup, in spite of the fact that its internals are identical, actually, to those of the GFX100 Mark II. Perhaps this is a function of additional tweaking that will find its way to other cameras. Or maybe I'm just imagining it. It looks and acts as an au courant system, with the same on-screen autofocus user interface style of a Sony, Nikon, Canon, or Leica. I might give the nod to the Q3 for execution, but I'd want more experience with both to make that call. This does not mean the RF's autofocus is quick or sure enough for high-end sports and wildlife, no matter in any case courtesy of the fixed wide lens, but I don't imagine that comes as a newsflash. Lawn bowling. Good. Compared to my X2D, however, the RF's autofocus is utterly next level, no comparison. Like the Q3 series, the RF can absolutely be used as a street camera under just about any circumstance. The X2D is best left for urban landscape or slow and quite deliberate street portrait. 4. Let's talk handling. That is, how comfortable is the GFX100 RF for street travel or everyday carry? It's a mixed bag, unequivocally smaller and lighter than any other medium format camera and within spitting distance of the size, weight, and handling of a Q3. Is that really true if I consider the 907? Well, it's still much bigger and heavier than an X100 series camera. It's not as easy in hand as a Q3, especially when equipped with the right grip. And like the X100 and the Q3 series, the handling is actually hampered by the same kind of cuboid body, the RF's token integrated grip on the fascia notwithstanding. Which is why, with my partner Ed, I'm delighted to share with you that Helium Design Lab will be adding a new member to our growing line of multiple patents pending. Anti-theft, no futs, AirTag compatible, Arca Swiss compatible, Peak Design Capture Clip compatible line of Helium Design Lab camera grips designed specifically for the RF. You will have to hold that thought for another video. Although, what I can tell you is that with all of our Helium grips, the Helium RF will be 5-axis CNC machined from a single block of aluminum. Like all of our Helium grips, the Helium RF is designed to create a more perfect union between photographer and camera. Like all of our grips, it is designed, engineered, fabricated, hand-assembled, and inspected locally in the U.S. because we believe financial ecosystems begin at home. 5. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, because you almost certainly know already or imagine what the biggest trade-off is beyond the fixed lens. No in-body image stabilization, no lens image stabilization, digital IS only. This is a real issue, although depending on what and how you shoot, maybe not so much. I've learned that once one experiences physical image stabilization, in body or in lens, it's tough to go back. IBIS just makes things easier, especially because it makes shooting close enough to base ISO in low EV scenarios possible, courtesy of slow shutter speeds to capture plenty of dynamic range. Lens-only image stabilization at the wider end is usually all that one needs. It is sufficient for this same purpose. The lack of non-digital image stabilization, in fact, stabilization of any kind, is less of an issue, as I just said, the wider the field of view, but also the smaller and lighter the lens. And the 35 f4 is wide, small, and light. My M11 also taught me, with its small footprint, relatively small and light lenses, low vibration shutter, no vibration electronic shutter, using shutter delay and bracing, a lost art, made it in particular to the tiny but incredible and terribly underrated 24mm f3.8 Elmar M. How much can be accomplished without IS at all? Even if it is the case that my Q3s are just a whole lot easier to use than any M, because beyond the lens stabilization, they are also weather-sealed and auto-focusing, like the RF. If you value IS like I do, however, value interchangeable lenses, insist upon going into 102 megapixel medium format, have the dosh, and don't think you need either the operational speed or fastest and surest autofocus performance, as in you can take it really slow. The Hasselblad's also 102 megapixel medium format X2D is an interchangeable lens camera with incredible in-body image stabilization, incredible feel in hand, and with build quality at Leica standard. Although this is a bit of a kick in the head, except once you think about it, for $100 more than the RF, you can pick up the GFX100 Mark II, which, unlike the RF, but like the X2D, is a 102 megapixel medium format interchangeable lens mirrorless camera with IBIS. I'll put it this way. The absence of real stabilization in the RF is a lamentable omission with real repercussions for many of us, but it is an understandable trade-off. 4900 versus 12 large for the X2 body only at 8300, 38V another $3,700. But for just 100 more, you can pick up the GFX100 S2. Of course, that's without a lens. But that may be a tougher call that only you can make. It's not really ideal for street travel or everyday carry, most especially because of the weight and bulk not only of the body, but of separate lenses. The $7,500 GFX100 Mark II is even bigger and heavier. 5. Let's talk value within the larger scheme of things. One could certainly argue, as I have essentially done in this video, that the GFX100 RF is the value champion among the cameras I've mentioned. I think, though, one could assert just as easily that you do get what you pay for, whether we're talking Q3s, X2D, GFX100 Mark II, GFX100 plain Mark II. I would. But there is another issue here. Full frame and smaller alternatives. The paradox is that Claudia shot many of the same test scenes at the same time I did with her $3,000, 430-gram body only 61 megapixel Sony A7CR, matched to her $2,300, 695-gram 24-72.8 GM2. And that kit offers this value proposition. For $400 more than the GFX100 RF, never mind how much less than the Leica, Hasselblad, or GFX100 Mark II, one gets a much more versatile, interchangeable lens camera with IBIS, better autofocus, although for what we do, not dramatically better, better menu system, wow, and image quality as good or better, with greater reach on either end, wider or longer at the same distance from the subject, than either the 28mm equipped Q3 or 35mm equipped RF. Although for me, the price of the A7CR's superior functional capabilities is the absence of joy in its use, its relatively terrible EVF, its single card slot, which in fact is not a huge deal in our experience, its menu system, and both its greater size and weight in hand with the 24-70 GM2. Then again, swap it out for Sony's 24 2.8G, or Sigma's even nicer, superior, optically I-Series 24 f2, maybe add a Sigma 50 f2 or 92.8 in the pocket to go with it. Now we're cooking with gas. Spend $500 more over an A7CR, and now you get the best EVF in the business with much better ergos, dual card slots, yada, 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 but the menu system and manual of arms remain the same. The rear panel is much more articulable on the A7R5. Of course, if you could find one, I guess we know where Fujifilm's manufacturing capacity has been going recently, the 40-megapixel APS-C X100 is unequivocally the best value of them all, full stop, the most compelling everyday carry, not only for value, but for size and weight, and for travel and street. Although we haven't mentioned used alternatives, still, you get the idea. All of which leaves us where precisely? I will wrap it up this way. One could assert, as I suggested from the very beginning, that the GFX100 RF is Fujifilm's medium format version of Leica's Q3, its price and own bits of ingenuity and thoughtfulness allowing it to stand on its own. One could just as easily assert, instead, that the GFX100 RF is a big boy, more than triple the price, EVF-only X100 with a more versatile field of view, additional cropping capabilities, and better color. A decontented but fixed lens equipped bargain GFX100 S Mark II, or perhaps what the GFX50R woulda, coulda, shoulda been. One could assert instead, going down a different path entirely, that when one takes a step back, there are so many other options that bracket the GFX100 RF, dramatically smaller, lighter, more versatile, and less expensive like that X100 larger, heavier, more versatile, and more expensive like the Hasselblad X2D. Other alternatives, closer at hand, that are more compelling to some of us from Leica, Q3 or SL3 for that matter, especially given the breadth and depth of the L-mount alliance, including tiny and relatively inexpensive but jewel-like lenses from Sigma, their I-Series, or Sony especially because they're doing a heck of a job, irrespective of price, that the GFX100 RF isn't quite the bargain it appears to be on first blush. These are all understandable assertions to make, although spec-laden, value-only comparisons, I think, miss the point. How does one define value, after all? One thing the GFX100 RF does not appear to be is what I imagined it could be. Neither a functionally compelling lower-priced alternative to the Q3, never mind, even with its true 16-bit 102-megapixel sensor, a functional Q3 series Two-Fer, that is to say, a single camera with combined fields of view and image quality of a Q3 and a Q3-43 for half the weight, half the size, twice the speed, because there's no need to switch, at closing in on 1/3 the price. As I said, I wondered about it, but I am shocked, I tell you, shocked. What is, on the other hand, undeniable, is that the GFX100 RF is a real value in the medium format space, a real value compared even to a single Q3, and a flat-out superior camera for classic street, travel, and everyday carry compared to the X2D or any other camera in the GFX lineup. It is, for Fujifilm in short, a triumph of packaging with keenly considered trade-offs while delivering real innovations in the details. It is the highest resolution medium format digital camera, the only current medium format digital camera, well suited for street travel and everyday carry, capable of gorgeous imagery. I think, all things considered, Fujifilm has done a great job. I just wish they'd aimed a bit higher for their lens, and once more with feeling that they'd do something about the menu. There's a reason why I keep repeating myself on this last point, but what do you think?
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes. E-commerce.
email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 10 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, join the conversation in the comments section below because this is an exceptional audience. If you'd like help with a portfolio review, gear selection, finding or honing your artistic voice, sign up for a one-on-one mentoring video call via Zoom at 3bmep.com/booking. Finally, please consider supporting our work by using the no-cost to you affiliate links down below, sending us coffee money via PayPal, or most especially, joining us on Patreon, links down below as well. However you choose to support us, as always, we thank you for it.